The little girl stood alone outside the towering glass building with a lunch bag that looked almost bigger than her tiny hands. Employees rushed past without noticing her, their eyes fixed on phones, meetings, and deadlines. She wore a faded blue dress, shoes that had been stitched together more than once, and a bright yellow hair ribbon that could not hide the exhaustion on her young face. When the security guard gently asked why she had come to one of the biggest companies in the city without an adult, she simply looked up with calm, hopeful eyes and whispered that her mother was too sick to come to work, so she had come instead. Those few innocent words would stop an entire corporation in its tracks and change the lives of hundreds of people before the sun went down. Before we continue this unforgettable story, please take a moment to like this video. Leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. Share this story with someone who believes kindness can change lives. And subscribe to Legacy and Lies if you believe every act of compassion has the power to create a miracle. Your support helps us share more inspiring stories with the world. The little girl's name was Marin. She was only 6 years old, yet life had already taught her lessons that many adults never learned. She lived with her mother, Nora, in a tiny apartment on the edge of the city. The walls leaked whenever it rained. The heater barely worked during winter, and every meal depended on whether Nora had enough energy to finish another cleaning shift. Nora had raised Marin alone since she was a baby, working every job she could find without ever complaining. She cleaned offices before sunrise, washed dishes in a small cafe during weekends, and sometimes stayed awake through the night sewing clothes for neighbors. She never wanted Marin to see how difficult life had become, but children often understood pain without hearing a single word. During the previous week, Nora's health had become worse. A persistent cough turned into a dangerous fever. Yet, she refused to stay home because missing work meant missing rent. Eventually, her body simply gave up. She collapsed while preparing breakfast and spent the next 2 days unable to stand. Marin quietly watched her mother struggle to breathe, placing cool towels on her forehead and bringing glasses of water the way she had seen nurses do on television. Every few hours, Nora whispered that she was sorry for missing work because she knew her employer would probably replace her. The company Nora cleaned every morning belonged to one of the youngest CEOs in the country, Rowan Mercer. Newspapers described him as a brilliant businessman who transformed struggling companies into billion-dollar success stories. Financial magazines admired his intelligence, but employees rarely saw him smile. His calendar was planned months ahead, every meeting measured to the minute, every decision driven by numbers. Investors loved him because profits kept growing, but many workers believed he had forgotten what ordinary people faced outside his office windows. On that bright Tuesday morning, Marin quietly packed her mother's cleaning gloves, folded her faded uniform into a paper bag, and slipped an apology letter beside them. She could barely read every word her mother had written, but she understood enough to know it explained why Nora could not come to work. Without waking her exhausted mother, Marin kissed her gently on the forehead and promised she would help. She locked the apartment door, memorized the bus route they traveled every day, and made the journey alone. The security guards were shocked when they discovered the little visitor had traveled across the city by herself. One employee immediately offered to call child services. Another wanted to contact the police, but something about the child's calm expression made everyone pause. She was frightened yet determined. She was not looking for attention. She simply believed that if someone missed work, another family member should help. Word spread through the building faster than any company announcement ever had. Receptionists stopped answering phones for a moment. Executives left conference rooms. Office assistants quietly gathered near the entrance. No one expected a 6-year-old to arrive carrying a pair of worn cleaning gloves like they were the most valuable thing in the world. Someone eventually informed Rowan Mercer about the unusual situation downstairs. At first, he barely listened. His schedule included negotiations worth hundreds of millions of dollars. A delayed meeting could affect stock prices. Yet, one sentence caught his attention. A little girl had come because her sick mother feared losing her cleaning job. For reasons Rowan himself could not explain, he cancelled the meeting. When Rowan entered the lobby, everyone stepped aside. He expected frightened tears or childish confusion. Instead, he found Marin standing politely beside the security desk, carefully holding the paper bag against her chest. She looked at the expensive suit surrounding her, but showed no fear. She simply asked whether someone could please tell her supervisor that her mother was sorry. Rowan slowly knelt until he was at eye level with her. He noticed the worn stitching on her shoes, the tiny scratches on her hands from helping around the apartment, and the exhaustion hidden behind eyes far too young to carry such responsibility. Something inside him shifted. For years, he had measured success using reports, contracts, and quarterly profits. Yet, one little girl standing alone reminded him that every company was ultimately built upon ordinary people whose struggles rarely appeared on spreadsheets. Instead of sending Marin away, Rowan surprised everyone by asking her to show him exactly where her mother worked every morning. The entire executive team followed in silence. They reached the empty office floor long before regular staff arrived. Cleaning carts waited quietly beside the hallway. Buckets, cloths, and bottles of disinfectant stood exactly where Nora had left them the previous week. Rowan looked around and realized something he had never noticed. Despite owning the building, every shining floor, spotless window, polished desk, and clean meeting room existed because invisible workers arrived before dawn and disappeared before anyone else arrived. Marin gently placed the cleaning gloves on the cart as if returning a treasured family possession. She explained that her mother always said every desk belonged to someone trying their best to provide for a family. That was why she cleaned each one carefully, even when nobody noticed. Several employees quietly wiped tears from their eyes. Rowan asked the Human Resources Director how much Nora earned. The answer stunned him. He had approved multi-million-dollar executive bonuses without blinking. Yet, the woman responsible for maintaining the building earned barely enough to survive despite years of loyal service. Instead of returning to his office, Rowan instructed his driver to prepare the company car. He wanted to meet Nora personally. An hour later, the luxury vehicle stopped outside an aging apartment building few executives had ever visited. Rowan climbed narrow stairs carrying grocery bags, medicine purchased from a nearby pharmacy, and fresh flowers that Marin insisted her mother loved. When Nora opened the door, she immediately tried to apologize for missing work, embarrassed by the unexpected visitors. Before she could finish speaking, Rowan gently told her there was nothing to apologize for. He looked around the apartment. The furniture was old, but perfectly clean. School drawings covered the refrigerator. A tiny bookshelf held worn children's stories borrowed from the public library. Everything reflected sacrifice, dignity, and love despite overwhelming hardship. Rowan learned that Nora had never requested help because she feared appearing irresponsible. She believed harder work solved every problem until illness proved otherwise. That afternoon, Rowan returned to headquarters with a completely different perspective. He gathered every department leader into the main conference hall. Instead of discussing profits, he spoke about people. He admitted he had spent years celebrating financial victories while overlooking the employees who quietly made those victories possible. He announced immediate paid medical leave for Nora with full salary. Then he introduced affordable health coverage for every cleaner, maintenance worker, cafeteria employee, and security guard. Emergency family assistance funds were created before sunset. Scholarship programs for employees' children followed the next week. Mental health support, child care assistance, and educational opportunities became permanent benefits. The board of directors initially questioned the increased costs. Rowan answered with quiet confidence. He explained that companies built on fear eventually crumble, but companies built on respect create loyalty impossible to purchase. Months passed. Something extraordinary began happening. Employee turnover dropped dramatically. Productivity increased. Customer satisfaction reached record levels. Workers smiled more often. Departments cooperated instead of competing. Investors who expected financial decline were amazed when company performance improved beyond expectations. Yet the greatest transformation could not be measured on any report. Every morning, employees greeted one another by name. Managers thanked cleaning staff. Executives shared lunch tables with maintenance workers. People finally saw each other. Meanwhile, Nora slowly recovered. With proper medical care and time to heal, she regained her strength. She eventually returned to work, not because she desperately needed every paycheck, but because she genuinely loved contributing to the community that now treated her with dignity. Rowan offered her a supervisory position with better hours and higher pay, allowing her to spend afternoons with Marin. As for Marin, the company employees unofficially adopted her as the building's little ray of sunshine. Birthdays were celebrated together. School supplies quietly appeared whenever needed. Retired accountants helped with homework. Engineers organized science days. Designers taught drawing classes. Everyone wanted to give something back to the child whose simple act of love had reminded them what truly mattered. One spring afternoon, the company hosted a family celebration in the courtyard. Hundreds of employees gathered beneath clear blue skies while children laughed, music filled the air, and colorful balloons floated gently above the trees. Rowan stood before the crowd and invited one very special guest onto the stage. Marin walked forward wearing a new blue dress, holding her mother's hand. The applause lasted several minutes. Rowan did not introduce her as a hero or a miracle. He simply thanked her for teaching an entire company that compassion was never a weakness. He admitted that leadership was not about standing above people, but standing beside them when they needed hope the most. Nora looked at her daughter with tears shining in her eyes. Everything she had sacrificed suddenly felt worthwhile. Marin had not changed the world with money, influence, or power. She had changed it with courage. Near the end of the celebration, Rowan quietly unveiled a new program called the Marin Initiative, providing emergency support for employees facing unexpected family hardships. The first plaque displayed near the company entrance carried a simple message. No one should have to choose between caring for family and keeping a job. Visitors stopped to read those words every day. Years later, employees still remembered the sunny morning when a tiny girl carrying a paper bag walked through the front doors, believing she could help her mother keep her job. New hires heard the story during orientation. Executives spoke about it during leadership training. It became part of the company's identity because it reminded everyone that extraordinary change often begins with ordinary kindness. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today. Leave a comment telling us what part moved you the most, and subscribe to Legacy and Lies, so together we can continue spreading stories that remind the world compassion still exists. Before this story ends, please comment with the words, "Kindness always wins," if you believe one small act of love can change someone's entire life. As the evening sun painted the city in warm golden light, Marin held her mother's hand while they walked home together. They were no longer frightened about tomorrow. Hope had replaced fear. Dignity had replaced desperation. And one quiet sentence spoken by a 6-year-old child had forever transformed the hearts of everyone who heard it. Sometimes the greatest leaders are not the ones who give the biggest speeches or sign the largest contracts. Sometimes they are simply the ones who stop, listen, and choose kindness when the world expects them to keep walking.